A ship almost a mile long drifts through the void, silent as a tomb, yet inside it thrums with a purpose so absolute, so relentless, that every heartbeat within its armored walls feels like a vow whispered to a god of war. No one aboard questions why they are here. The better question, the only question that matters, is this: what does life become when every waking moment is dedicated to purging the galaxy in the Emperor's name? Picture the first thing a neophyte hears when he awakens in the depths of the Eternal Crusader's sister vessel, a Black Templar strike cruiser known simply as Vigil's Spear. He wakes not to comfort nor ceremony, but to the thunderous roar of a distant macro-reactor pumping raw power into the ship's weapon batteries. The deck beneath him vibrates like the heartbeat of a slumbering giant, a reminder that he is now part of something ancient, violent, and sacred. Before he can gather his thoughts, initiates and battle brothers march past him in precise columns, their black ceramite armor scraping softly, as if whispering prayers of its own. Their presence is overwhelming, each one a living weapon molded by centuries of war, their helmets marked with symbols of unyielding devotion and scripture carved directly into their armor, plating by blades heated in the forge of faith. Inside this cruiser, life is defined not by hours, but by rituals. Every corridor seems alive with them. Candles flicker despite the absence of wind, their flames dancing in front of carved idols of the Emperor, casting long shadows that stretch across steel bulkheads, inscribed with litanies of hatred and hope. Chains hang from the ceiling like the ribs of some great beast, each one holding parchments of oaths sworn before battle, some so old their ink has faded into ghostly smudges. The air tastes of incense and machine oil, a mingling of the sacred and the brutal, reflecting the hearts of those who call this place home. Yet, for all the roaring machinery and clattering prayer beads, there is an eerie stillness to the cruiser, a sense that every brother aboard is waiting, not with fear, but with hunger, a hunger for righteous war, for the chance to prove themselves worthy of the Emperor's eternal approval. Even the servitors, half-human remnants of once-living men and women, move with mechanical devotion, sweeping the corridors or repairing torn plating with clacking limbs, while muttering needlessly repeated scripture fragments through broken vox grills. Deep within the ship is where most humans, those ordinary souls the Templars use for menial labor, logistics, or support, rarely dare to go. Only the Astartes walk with purpose through the inner sanctums, and in those places, the air grows heavier, almost oppressive, thick with the lingering presence of centuries of war councils, victories, and sacrifices. It is in these chambers that the Castellan rehearses potential battle strategies in silence, surrounded by hololithic projections of enemy fleets that flicker like dying stars. He stands unmoving for hours, his armor locked in place by faith and duty alone, as he waits for the Emperor's judgment to guide the next strike. But life aboard Vigil's Spear is not all strategy and stillness. At certain hours, though no one aboard openly cares for clocks, the rhythmic chanting of battle brothers echoes through the halls as they gather in the chapel of the Eternal Crusade. Here, beneath a towering statue of the Emperor carved from onyx and steel, they kneel in perfect lines. Their voices merge in a thunderous chant that shakes even the servo skulls hovering overhead. Each brother recites personal vows: to purge the heretic, to destroy the alien, to never forget the weakness of flesh. The walls hum with their devotion, the ancient runes etched into the chapel's columns glowing faintly as if awakened by the force of their intent. Training, too, is a constant pulse within the ship. The clang of sword against sword echoes from the practice arenas, where initiates face their masters in brutal sparring rituals. These are not gentle lessons. They are tests built on the edge of lethality. Change words roar, sparking against power-sheathed blades, and every strike is delivered with the full force of an Astartes seeking perfection. Watching them is like watching statues of obsidian come to life, moving faster than their weight should allow. Each blow a prayer, each parry a scripture of survival. Yet there are quieter moments hidden between the relentless rhythm of devotion and training. In the armory, where the air smells of sacred oils and burning incense, Tech Marines tend to the weapons with reverent care. They kneel before bolters and power swords as if tending to wounded brothers, whispering binary prayers to appease the machine spirits that reside within each weapon. Every gun is more than a tool. It is a partner in the crusade, a relic that must be honored if it is to continue serving with unwavering loyalty. Far deeper still, beyond reinforced blast doors marked with purity seals, lies the apothecarian. Here, the sterility of ceramic and steel contrasts sharply with the red-tinged glow of lumen lights. The apothecary works in near silence, surrounded by gene seed samples protected in stasis chambers, their faint pulsing glow illuminating the skull-faced helmets stacked neatly along the far wall. For the Templars, life and death are intertwined through duty. Every fallen brother is brought here, where his gene seed is recovered with reverence, ensuring that the crusade lives on through every generation of warriors. The apothecary's hands, though armored, move with surprising delicacy as he performs this sacred duty. Outside the apothecarian, in the barracks, the Battle Brothers' quarters are stark and Spartan. There are no personal decorations, no luxuries, no reminders of civilian life long forgotten. Each chamber holds only a rack for armor, a stand for weapons, and a slab of reinforced steel where a Marine may meditate in the hours between war and prayer. Some brothers carve their vows directly into the walls, filling their chambers with the echoes of past crusades, names of heretics slain, worlds cleansed, and promises yet to be fulfilled. Compared to the superhuman lives of the Templars, the ordinary crew, those fragile, mortal humans who maintain the ship's engines, oversee the weapon systems, or manage the logistics, exist in near constant awe and fear. They work tirelessly within the lower decks, areas where the ship's reactor hum resonates like a massive heartbeat, and where temperatures shift wildly as plasma conduits flare with radiant energy. Many have never seen an Astartes up close, but they speak of them with uneasy reverence. To these humans, the Templars are living angels of vengeance, beautiful, terrible, and utterly uncompromising. Occasionally, a chaplain descends among the crew, his skull helm gleaming in the half-light as he delivers sermons that stir both terror and faith in equal measure. His voice booms through the ship's vox systems, declaring that every man and woman aboard serves the Emperor's divine plan. Then he vanishes back into the shadows of the sanctum decks, leaving behind a silence that feels heavier than the gravity plating beneath their feet. There are times, though, when even this monumental sense of devotion is interrupted by the distant thrum of warning klaxons. When those alarms blare, every corner of the cruiser shifts instantly from routine to readiness. Tech Marines descend into the engine core. Gunners sprint toward the fire control stations. Servitors lock into defense mode, extending mechanical limbs fitted with welding tools and combat attachments. And the Astartes they assemble in the launch bays with terrifying efficiency, their armor locking into place with thunderous metallic clacks as they prepare to board drop pods or Thunderhawk gunships. In the launch bay, the atmosphere becomes electric, thick with the metallic taste of anticipation and the ozone sting of charging power fields. Rows of Templars stand perfectly still, their eyes fixed straight ahead, each one silently repeating the vows carved into their armor. They wait for the Castellan's command, for the moment the doors will open to reveal the void beyond and the battle that awaits. Yet, even in these moments of sharp tension, the cruiser itself seems to hold its breath, as if the machine spirits within its hull yearn for the fury of war just as much as the warriors who inhabit it. But not every day aboard Vigil's spear is filled with alarms. Many are spent drifting through silent reaches of the galaxy, tracking the faintest signs of Xeno's activity or heretical presence. On such days, the strike cruiser becomes a world entirely its own, a monastery of steel, a fortress of faith suspended in the abyss. The darkness outside its hull is absolute, stretching endlessly in every direction. Yet within its armored heart, there is nothing but purpose. And then every so often, a strange stillness falls. The brothers feel at first a subtle shift in the hum of the engines, a flicker in the lumen strips, a moment where the entire ship seems to pause. A sign, a whisper, a warning. For on this particular voyage, something ancient stirs beyond the sensors. Something the Templars have not yet spoken of aloud. Something that none of the crew can see, but all of them can feel. And as the vigil spear drifts toward that distant shadow in the void, the brothers begin to prepare, not for war, but for something far more uncertain. Whatever is waiting out there, it is not a foe they have faced before. And when the ship's auger arrays finally catch the first distorted signal from the darkness ahead, every oath-bound warrior aboard realizes the same thing. This crusade is about to change forever. No one speaks as the distorted signal repeats through the auger arrays, a low, broken whispering of frequencies that shouldn't exist, a pattern so irregular that even machine spirits hesitate before relaying it through the vox. It pulses like a dying heartbeat, then collapses into static, only to surge again with a haunting cadence that feels almost intentional. The air across the strike cruiser seems to tighten, as though the void outside has reached through the hull to place a cold hand on every soul aboard. In the Strategium, the Castellan stands motionless before the hololithic display as the distorted signal loops again. It warps into jagged peaks of red light, twisting the floating projection into shapes that flicker between the natural and the unnatural. A lesser man might assume it to be an anomaly, cosmic interference, a damaged beacon, a dying ship. But the Castellan's gaze narrows, his gauntlet hands tightening behind his back. There is something embedded within those broken patterns, something like a whisper buried beneath the static. He listens. He waits. He tries to decode the intent behind it. A chaplain steps forward, his skull helm reflecting the dying light of the hololith. "It calls to us," he growls, his voice resonant and heavy, not in words but in warning. The Castellan does not respond. He doesn't need to. The tension in his stance speaks more clearly than any declaration. Within minutes, the ship's internal claxons pulse once, not an alarm, but a summons. Across the cruiser, battle brothers pause mid-prayer, mid-training, mid-breath. Servitors freeze in place. Tech Marines cease their incantations. The ship falls into a strange, unified stillness. Then the doors of the Strategium slide open, and a figure enters. An Emperor's champion clad in obsidian armor, adorned with scripture etched so deeply it looks carved by fate itself. He says nothing as he walks to the projection and observes the distorted signal. The red glow paints sharp lines across his helmet, giving the illusion of shifting grimaces beneath the unyielding steel. "It is not a distress call," he says at last. "It is something else, something older." Outside the Strategium, rumors drift through the mortal crew like smoke. Some speak of ghost ships drifting in forbidden regions of space, sending distorted remnants of their final screams into the void. Others whisper about Xenos technology, things that corrupt signals, twist minds, warp ships into coffins drifting without light. But the oldest among the crew, the ones who have served on Templar vessels for decades, speak of something different. They speak quietly, only when alone, of regions of space where the veil between real space and the immaterium grows thin. Places where the warp clings like frost, where the Emperor's light dims, where strange signals bleed into the waking world like cracks in reality. They call them shadow corridors. And one such corridor drifts directly ahead of the vigil spear. Hours pass with no clarity. The signal grows stronger, vibrating through the hull like a pulse matching the cruiser's engines. Eventually, a new development ripples through the ship. An auger ping from forward arrays, faint but unmistakable. A vessel, drifting, silent. Its silhouette emerges through layers of distortion. A broken hulk of metal, twisted and ruptured, as though crushed by the pressure of a star. Its hull markings are unreadable at first, shrouded in cosmic frost and drifting debris. But as the vigil spear draws nearer, the flickering light from the distant nebula reveals fragments of black armor plating beneath the wreckage. It is a space marine ship. The chaplain studies the image, his posture rigid. If there are survivors, they will be brought to the Emperor's embrace. If corruption has taken root, they will be purged. But there is something strange about the wreck, something unsettling. No distress beacon, no life readings, no power signatures, only the signal, that whispering, pulsing, broken signal, coming directly from the derelict vessel. The Castellan issues the order without hesitation. A boarding party will be assembled. Black Templars do not fear the unknown. They seek it out and crush it beneath ceramite and holy flame. In the launch bay, the air vibrates with the hum of engines and the rising tension of warriors preparing for a battlefield they cannot see. Candles flicker along the gantries as chaplains pass through, tapping each marine with the crozius and whispering litanies of protection. The Emperor's champion walks among them like a living herald of judgment, his blade hanging at his side, its edge pulsing faintly with power fields that hunger for corruption to burn. The initiates are the last to arrive, their armor less ornate, their vows newly etched, their hearts pounding with a mixture of devotion, fear, and anticipation. This is their chance to prove themselves, to join their brothers not just in ritual, but in righteous battle. Yet even they cannot ignore the strange atmosphere. Something about this mission feels different. Not wrong, but heavy, as though some unseen force watches every step they take. The Castellan speaks only once before they board the Thunderhawks. We are instruments of the Emperor's wrath. Nothing beyond that hull will turn us from our purpose. The Thunderhawks launch from the cruiser, engines blazing across the void as they descend toward the silent, derelict ship. The vessel's broken hull looms like a corpse frozen in the void, its surface scarred with impact points and melted by unknown energies. The docking clamps lock onto the fractured bulkhead with a thundering clank, sending a tremor through the dead metal. Inside, darkness swallows everything beyond the breach. The first Templars enter with bolters raised, auto senses sweeping through the shadows. Dust floats in slow motion through the stale air. Frost coats the walls in jagged layers. It looks less like a ship and more like a tomb carved from the void itself. And then they see them. Scriptures, dozens of them, carve into the walls in jagged, frantic slashes. Some long, some short, some etched deep enough to pierce wiring beneath the plating. It's as though someone, many someones, carve their vows directly into the hull in a frenzy of desperation. An initiate reaches out to touch one of the carvings. The moment his gauntlet makes contact, the faintest tremor runs through the metal like a breath. The Emperor's champion speaks from behind him. Do not touch the walls again. The deeper the Templars move into the ship, the more signs of violence they uncover. Scattered shells, impact marks, splintered ceramite, signs of battles fought in narrow corridors with no coordination, no formation, no order. Fighting not against an invading force, but each other. In a shattered antechamber, they find the first bodies, space marines in black armor, or what remains of them. Their helms are torn open. Their armor displays no heraldry, no chapter markings, no purity seals. And where their chest plates should display their chapter emblem, there is nothing, as though it has been scraped clean. A silence falls over the boarding party. Even servitors pause. The apothecary kneels beside one of the fallen, his scanners whirring. No signs of Xenos contamination, he says carefully, but trace energies consistent with warp exposure. The chaplain presses a hand against the corpse's helm. These were brothers once. Now they are echoes. A low vibration runs through the deck. Then another. A rumble, faint but growing. The Templars instinctively form a defensive circle, bolters aimed toward the shadows ahead. The Emperor's champion steps forward, his blade humming with restrained fury. The Castellan raises a hand for silence. From deep within the ship, light flickers, dim, weak. A single lumen strip, sparking to life as though awakened by their presence. One more flickers farther ahead, then another. A path of dying lights illuminating a corridor that leads into the heart of the derelict vessel. And beneath the hum of the failing electrical systems, for the first time, the signal changes. No longer static, no longer broken. A whispered phrase emerges, faint, stretched, warped by distance and time. A voice not meant to cross the void. A voice that trembles with fear and something far worse. Do not let them wake. The lights ahead die at once, plunging the corridor back into darkness. The Templars brace themselves, for whatever lies deeper within this tomb ship has heard them, and it is no longer sleeping. For several heartbeats, there's no sound at all. Kind of silence, so absolute it feels alive. The Templars' auto-senses compensate, amplifying the faint hum of their armor's power packs, the soft thrum of their hearts beating in perfect rhythm. But nothing comes from the darkness ahead. Whatever whispered that warning has retreated, or is waiting. The Castellan motions forward. The boarding party advances, each step measured, each breath a controlled discipline. Their armored boots echo through the corridor, a steady thunder that feels almost intrusive, too loud for a place that has forgotten the sound of living footsteps. The air is colder the deeper they move, heavy with a metallic tang and an underlying sweetness that feels wrong, almost sickly. When the apothecary checks the readings, his voice is unsettlingly quiet. Trace organics, decomposition, but not natural. The chaplain steps closer to a wall where the frost has begun to crack under the cruiser's internal pressure. He runs a gauntlet finger along the fractured edge. The ice breaks away, revealing more clawed scripture beneath. Words of fear, not faith. Words that look carved by shaking hands. They wrote these in their final hours. The chaplain murmurs, "These are confessions." A faint vibration trembles the deck once more, a low, pulsing signal that feels too rhythmic to be mechanical. The Emperor's champion angles his helm, listening. "It's not just a beacon," he says. "It's a heartbeat." The corridor ahead opens into a shattered assembly hall. The ceiling arches high above, cracked open like a ribcage torn apart by something massive. Faint starlight bleeds in through the gaps, illuminating drifting debris and frozen bodies, suspended in the air like macabre constellations. Some of the corpses are intact, their armor broken but recognizable. Others look melted, their forms twisted as if they tried to resist something, only to be reshaped in agony. And then the Templars see the center of the chamber. A massive, circular device, broken, scorched, and pulsing with a dying red glow. A warp relay. Not Imperial, not Xenos. Something in between. The Tech Marine approaches it slowly. His servo arms unfurl as he extends auspex toward the device. "This is crude," he mutters, yet it interfaces with the warp directly, as if it were built not by hands, but by instinct. The Emperor's champion's voice darkens. "Heretical. Worse," the Tech Marine replies. "Desperate." The Castellan steps closer. The device pulses once, sending a tremor through the chamber. And suddenly the signal changes again. It sharpens, clarifies. A new voice emerges from it, fractured, layered, but unmistakably human. "Stop the cradle." Then silence. The Tech Marine recoils as sparks erupt from his auspex. The machine spirit screams through his vox bead with distorted binary. He slams his fist against his chest, silencing it. The relay pulses again, harder this time, so hard it knocks loose debris into the air. Something is still active inside it, but something else is resisting. The Emperor's champion raises his blade. Destroy it. But before he can strike, a sound echoes through the ruined hall, a low, rumbling groan of metal twisting under impossible pressure. The Templars snap into formation as shadows begin to shift along the walls. Not movement, not life, memory. Hololithic projectors flicker on, sputtering weak beams of ghostly blue light. Images flash across the chamber, jerky, glitching recordings pulled from the ship's failing memory banks. The Templars look up as the projections begin to form a sequence. First, a group of Space Marines kneeling in prayer inside this very hall. Then blackout. Next, the same Marine screaming, their armor melting as if under extreme heat. Another blackout. Then, those same Marines carving scripture into the walls with their combat blades, their motions erratic, desperate. The chaplain's breath grows heavy. This was deliberation breaking under pressure. The projections flick again, this time showing the warp relay activated. A blinding flash surges outward, bending the hololithic image. Marines fall to the ground, writhing. Some get up, some do not. The ones who rise look different, distorted shapes, their armor cracking, their limbs twisting unnaturally. And then, the final recording. A lone Marine crawling toward the holocom, his helm shattered, revealing eyes that flicker with warp light. His lips move. The distortion breaks, revealing a single phrase. They are not us anymore. The hololith dies. The silence that follows is suffocating. The Castellan is the first to break it. This ship was infected by something born from that device. A warp anomaly. A parasite. The apothecary shakes his head slowly. Not possession. Not mutation. Something awakening. Before they can analyze further, a sudden crash erupts from the far corner of the hall. The Templars pivot instantly, bolters aimed. A massive cargo door buckles inward with a thunderous groan, as if something behind it is pushing. Slow, heavy, relentless. The Castellan signals for caution. The door bends again. A screeching of metal tears through the chamber. Then, silence. A single hand bursts through the steel. Not human. Not Astartes. Something larger. Hardened. Carved like obsidian. Fingers twisted as if sculpted by pain itself. It rips the metal aside as though peeling open a coffin. What emerges is not a creature. Not entirely. It wears fragments of black power armor fused into flesh, its form elongated, its limbs malformed but powerful. Where its face should be, only jagged bone and burn symbols remain. And etched into its chest, carved so deep the letters shine like raw wounds, is a scripture distorted beyond recognition. One of the Templars whispers, "Emperor, preserve us." But the chaplain's voice cuts sharp. "No, that was a brother once. It is a corpse wearing faith like a mask." The creature moves, not with the randomness of a beast, but with purpose. A recognition. It turns its head toward the Templars, and something like memory flickers in its hollow eyes. The Emperor's champion steps forward, blade igniting with a crackling surge of power. "You will find peace now." The creature lunges. The chamber erupts in gunfire and roaring steel. Bolter shells tear into its flesh, but it barely staggers. Its body absorbs the impacts like wet clay, sealing over wounds that should have crippled it. The Emperor's champion meets its charge head-on, their clash echoing through the ruined hall like thunder in a cathedral. The creature's strength is monstrous, its movements fueled by something far beyond physical power. It strikes with a ferocity that pushes even the champion back a step, forcing him to anchor himself with both his boots and his will. Sparks burst from their impact, illuminating the warped scriptures carved into its limbs. The Castellan joins the fray, his power sword carving glowing arcs through the air. Together, he and the champion hammer at the monster, each blow severing bone, slicing through armor, exposing the pulsating crimson beneath. Finally, the champion drives his blade deep into the creature's chest. It convulses violently, releasing a howl that is neither human nor warp-born, but something in between, a sound of agony and remembrance interwoven. Then its body collapses, shuddering, as the corrupted flesh dissolves into steaming fragments. Silence returns. but not relief. The apothecary kneels over the remains. His voice is grim. This was not warp mutation. The gene seed is awakened, altered, forced to evolve against its nature. The Templars freeze. Forced, not corrupted, not possessed. Shaped, the Castellan turns sharply toward the warp relay at the center of the hall. Its pulsing grows faster now, as though responding to the creature's death. As though aware, the Emperor's champion looks up slowly. The signal was not a warning from outside. His words fall like stone into water, rippling through every warrior present. It was from within, the last conscious remnant of whatever these brothers became. A low tremor rolls beneath their feet. The relay pulses harder. A new voice begins to form, a whisper layered with countless overlapping tones, like a chorus trapped inside a dying machine. Do not let finish. The Castellan's eyes widen behind his helm. Finish what? The Tech Marine turns toward the corridor leading deeper into the ship. His auspex, still damaged, flickers with unstable readings, but one pattern emerges with brutal clarity. The signal is not strongest here. It is coming from far below, from the vessel's gene lab vaults. The apothecary straightens slowly, realization dawning in his voice. The cradle. They were not speaking of a relay. A terrible quiet washes over the chamber. The Emperor's champion clenches his gauntlet. Something is growing down there. And then the lights flicker. A single, echoing sound rises from the depths of the ship. Not a signal, not machinery. A heartbeat. Slow, heavy, growing stronger. Something below them is awakening. The heartbeat echoes again, low, resonant, almost organic in its weight. It travels through the deck, plating like a pulse carried through bone. A single tremor that makes the lumen strip shiver and the frost on the walls shift in tiny cracking webs. Every Templar tenses, not out of fear, but out of instinct. Something alive should not sound like a war drum. Something alive inside a dead ship should not sound like it's growing stronger. Then a second heartbeat comes. Louder, closer. The apothecary's helm tilts, picking up readings the others can't yet sense. It's accelerating, he murmurs. This is no echo. Whatever lies below, it is fully conscious. The Castellan raises a hand. The warriors reform, silent and precise, every step calibrated. They descend into a lower stairwell where the darkness thickens, swallowing the beam of their helmet lamps. The deeper they go, the more the air changes. It becomes humid, as if the ship is sweating. The metal walls are slick, smeared with streaks of something that could be condensation, until the apothecary scrapes a sample and whispers, "Protein residue, not water." No one speaks after that. The Black Templars continue downward, passing through decks where the architecture begins to distort in subtle, wrong ways. Bulkheads stretch farther than they should, ceilings curve unnaturally, and supporting beams seem to have melted into organic shapes, as though softened by heat and then reformed by unseen hands. It's not warp distortion, it's adaptation. When they reach the Gene Lab deck, the temperature shifts again, now warm, almost too warm. A faint glow pulses through the corridor ahead. Not electrical, not mechanical, more like bioluminescence bleeding through the cracks of a sealed chamber door. The heartbeat comes again, so loud now it vibrates through their armor. The Emperor's champion moves to the front, blade drawn, energy crackling softly like the restrained breathing of a caged predator. As they approach the sealed chamber, strange markings appear on the walls, smooth grooves in the metal, long and fluid, as if fingers drag through molten steel. The apothecary examines one. "This is Gene Lab alloy," he murmurs. "It does not deform under ordinary heat. Something shaped it with precision." The chaplain's voice grows low. "Creation from flesh, steel softened like wax. This is desecration beyond madness." A shriek of tearing metal reverberates somewhere far down the hall. Not close enough to threaten, but close enough to warn. Inside the sealed chamber beyond this door lies the cradle they were told to stop. But no one knows what shape a cradle takes in a place like this, whether it is a machine, creature, or something in between. The Castellan signals for breaching charges, but before the Tech Marine can step forward, the door shudders. A faint, irregular knock sounds from the other side, not pounding, not violent, almost hesitant, like something inside has grown curious. All weapons raise instantly. The knocking stops. A breath passes. Then the heartbeat doubles in speed, pounding so rapidly the walls themselves seem to tense around the Templars. The Emperor's champion steps forward and speaks not to his brothers, but to whatever lies beyond. You will answer for what was done here. The chamber door does not respond. The Castellan gives a sharp nod. The Tech Marine plants the charges, steps back, and the explosion rips open the door in a burst of light and flame. Smoke spills outward. The Templars enter with formation-perfect precision. They are met with a sight that halts even the Emperor's champion in mid-stride. The Gene Lab is vast, larger than it should be. Its walls pushed outward, expanded into bulbous arches, formed from a mixture of metal and something disturbingly organic. Lumen globes float in the air, cracked but still glowing with that faint, warm light. Pools of viscous fluid ripple underfoot, reflecting distorted images of the Templars as they step inside. And at the center, the cradle, a massive structure grown from both machine components and flesh-like tendrils. It resembles cocoon the size of a dropship, suspended by sinewy filaments that pulse with each heartbeat. Every surface is carved with scriptures, thousands of them, some in clear Gothic, others in frantic scratches or unfamiliar symbols. But they all repeat variations of the same phrase: "We must become more." The apothecary whispers, almost unwillingly, "Emperor, protect us." They try to evolve themselves. The cradle shifts, not violently, not aggressively, but like something inside is adjusting its weight, settling deeper into its cocoon. The heartbeat matches the movement, syncing perfectly. The Tech Marine's auspex begins to wail, a shrill, panicked screech of corrupted readings. "Kill it," the Emperor's champion orders. "Now." But the Castellan does not move. He steps closer, studying the cradle with a caution bordering on dread. "Look at the walls." The others turn. Embedded in the laboratory walls, dozens of them, are armored forms. Space Marines, their bodies half fused into the structure, some with their helmets split open, others with their armor peeled back like fruit skins. Their eyes remain closed, their limbs suspended in unnatural angles. They look neither dead nor alive, but paused in some grotesque state of becoming. The chaplain approaches one, touching the armor near where its shoulder pauldron should be. These brothers, they were not consumed. His voice falters. They were integrated. A slow, dragging sound fills the chamber, not from the cradle, from the walls. One of the embedded forms twitches, fingers curling slightly before going still again. The Emperor's champion raises his voice. "End this abomination. Tear down the cradle and purge the remains." His command resounds with holy fury. The Templars move to obey. But then something changes. Not in the room, in the heartbeat. It stutters, falters, then resumes in a slower, more deliberate rhythm, almost like breathing, almost aware. The cocoon begins to open. A thin crack splits down its center, warm light spilling through like the first rays of dawn across a battlefield. The filaments tremble as the structure unfolds itself, petal by petal, revealing a figure curled inside, massive, armored, and disturbingly familiar. Astartes' physiology, but larger, bulkier. The armor shaped like a Black Templar's, but warped, elongated, grown rather than forged. The figure shifts, its eyes open, and they are not the eyes of a newborn creature. They are human, haunted, old. The Templars freeze, because the figure speaks, not with a monstrous growl, not with the voice of corruption, but with the raw, strained tone of a warrior forced through hell and dragged back again. Brothers, stop. The Emperor's champion's grip tightens on his sword. Name yourself, creature. The being inside the cradle struggles to lift itself, blood and fluid dripping from its reconstructed form. When it finally manages to stand, towering above even a fully armored Astartes, it lifts its head with a kind of exhausted dignity. I was Marshal Roderick of the Black Templars. Every warrior in the chamber goes still. Marshal Roderick, a name known like legend, a commander presumed dead for nearly a century. The creature, no, the thing that once bore that title, shakes, muscles spasming with every breath. His armor grows visibly with each beat of the cradle behind him, plates shifting, reshaping, reforming. I tried to stop it, he murmurs. I tried so hard. The apothecary steps forward despite the champion's outstretched arm. What did they do to you? He asks quietly. Roderick lifts a trembling hand, gesturing toward the embedded forms in the walls. They wanted to become more, stronger, beyond the design of our kind. The warp did not change them. They changed themselves. His voice breaks, and then the cradle learned from us. A silence falls so heavy it feels like gravity itself. Marshal Roderick's gaze lifts to meet theirs, and in that moment, the Templars see the truth, the pain, the loss, the absolute certainty that whatever stands before them is not wholly him, but not wholly something else either. You must destroy the cradle, he whispers, but you cannot do it while I still live. The Emperor's champion raises his sword, but something stops him. A low rumble moves through the room. The embedded forms in the walls begin to stir. Not violently, not fully, but enough to make the entire chamber swell with the unbearable realization that they are awakening too. Marshal Roderick's expression shifts from sorrow to urgency. Brothers, he says, voice shaking, you are out of time. And then, the heartbeat stops. Something in the air changed as the hymn faded into silence, as if the strike cruiser itself were holding its breath. The aftershocks of the revelation still trembled in the air. The truth that the vessel's haunting echoes and flickers of light were not the ghosts of forgotten battles, nor the tricks of half-sleep and exhaustion, but a presence woven into the bones of the ship. A memory, a will, and now that was stirred. The torches along the walls flickered with an unnatural synchrony, each flame bending in the same direction for a heartbeat, like a single exhale drifting through the corridor. The neophyte froze. Even the initiates paused, their armor humming quietly, as if something unseen brushed across their pauldrons. It was no attack, no malfunction. It was recognition. The ship was acknowledging them. At first the neophyte thought it was only his imagination, the lingering adrenaline painting shadows where none existed, but then he felt it, the faintest vibration beneath his boots, subtle enough to pass for the hum of the plasma drives, yet different, intentional, rhythmic, a whisper of motion, as if the very decking plates were shifting under the surface, rearranging themselves in patterns older than any living warrior aboard. A memory rising from deep within the hull. The inviolate oath was speaking not in words, but in sensations, in the low thrum of her ancient heart. And when the neophyte closed his eyes, just for a moment, he could almost sense a presence, vast, scarred by war, and watchful in a way that was neither benevolent nor hostile, merely aware. He opened his eyes to see Brother Sergeant Enoch observing him, the crimson glow from the lumen strips turning the sergeant's skull-helm visor into a hollow stare. Enoch had noticed something. He always did, but instead of reprimanding the neophyte, he only nodded once, as if confirming an unspoken truth. "You feel it now," Enoch murmured, his voice low enough that only those closest could hear. "Good. You cannot serve upon a living oath unless you understand that it remembers every victory and every shame carved into its frame." His tone was steady, but the neophyte detected a tightness behind the words, not fear, but reverence sharpened by caution. The procession resumed, But the atmosphere had shifted. The ship's corridors, once cold and utilitarian, now felt like tunnels carved through a sleeping giant's bones. Every step echoed differently, as though the cruiser was listening. The neophyte found himself studying the walls, the battle scars sealed with adamantine welds, the purity seals fluttering faintly though no wind touched them, the carved oaths etched by generations of Templars whose names had long faded into honored oblivion. He imagined the shadows walking beside him, each oath a fragment of a vow unending, and for the first time, he understood why the Black Templars claimed no homeworld. They lived instead on the living memories of ships like this, crusading cathedrals that carried their faith from war zone to war zone. The deeper they ventured, the more the air thickened. Ahead lay the strategium, where the ship's command crew, Tech Marines, and Castellan Raga awaited. Yet something else waited too. Something the neophyte could feel before the doors came into view. A pulse, like a distant heartbeat. Not mechanical, not human. Something woven between worlds. When the adamantine doors parted with a hiss, the sensation intensified, sinking into his skin like a chill of premonition. Inside, the strategium was a cathedral of void war. Hololithic stars shimmered in rings of tactical data. The Oculus viewport at the far end displayed a nebula blooming in colors no mortal could name. The tech altars hummed with Benharic prayers, and at the center, surrounded by a circle of flickering red votive lights, floated the thing that stole the neophyte's breath. A fragment of black stone, jagged and pulsing with an inner ember of cold fire. A shard of something ancient, something wrong, and yet revered. The Castellan turned as the procession entered, his artificed plate gleaming like midnight struck by lightning. "You have felt her voice," Raga said, his baritone voice echoing through the chamber. It was not a question. The inviolate oath awakens because she senses what we carry, and what approaches. His gaze drifted toward the shard, and for a heartbeat, the neophyte thought he saw a flicker of unease behind the Castellan's eyes. "The relic is stirring again," one of the Tech Marines intoned, servo limbs twitching like restless insects. Its resonance bleeds into the ship's noospheric lattice. The neophyte didn't understand the implications, but the veteran's silence spoke volumes. Whatever this shard was, it wasn't merely precious. It was dangerous, bound within containment fields and prayers. The sergeant's voice broke through the tension. "The Emperor guides our blade. He will guide us now." But the words felt brittle against the humming dread radiating softly from the stone. As they approached the relic, the hololithic map shifted abruptly. Stars flickered. A distant system blinked red. Alarms remained silent, yet the strategium felt as though the temperature dropped several degrees. "Unregistered warp disturbance," a Vox officer muttered, eyes widening. "Vector matches no Imperial signal." The Castellan stepped forward. "Display." The map zoomed. A ripple of impossible geometry shimmered at the edge of the system they were traveling toward, like a tear attempting to form, like something was pressing on reality from the other side. A warp anomaly was rare. One appearing without warning was ominous, but one responding to a relic aboard their own ship, that was something else entirely. The shard pulsed brighter, casting long angular shadows across the chamber. The inviolate oath groaned, metal shifting somewhere deep below, as if bracing herself, and the neophyte suddenly felt a presence brush against his mind. Cold, searching, curious. Not the ship, not the Emperor, something older. He staggered. An initiate caught his arm, steadying him as if this was expected. "Do not let it in," the initiate whispered, voice barely more than breath behind the helmet's grill. "It tests you. It tests all of us." The neophyte tried to speak, but a strange pressure coiled behind his thoughts, as though the universe itself held its palm against his skull. Then a sound, faint, impossible, coming not from the chamber but from inside his mind. A whisper formed from static and distant screams. A question, not in words, But intent? Why do you carry the fragment? What truth lies sealed beneath your faith? He didn't answer. Couldn't. But he felt the jagged edge of the shard's awareness brush against the core of his identity. It was searching for something it had sensed earlier, something he himself did not yet understand, something buried in the moment he first boarded the ship and felt the corridor lights flicker, something the relic recognized. The pressure snapped away as suddenly as it came, leaving him breathless. The Castellan's voice boomed, grounding the room. "We proceed." He signaled the tech marines to tighten the containment field around the shard. "Prepare the strike teams. Whatever stirs beyond that anomaly, we will meet it with blade and fire." But even as Roger spoke, the neophyte could feel it. The shard was not finished, and neither was the thing reaching through the warp to find it. The inviolate oath trembled again, deeper this time, as though some force outside was dragging its claws lightly over the hull. A sensation like fingers drumming against the void. The lights dimmed, then brightened. Monitors crackled with interference. And somewhere far off in the darkness of the ship's lower decks, an alarm began to wail. Not a battle alarm, not a breach alert, a containment alarm. The tech marine stiffened instantly, servo arms rising like spears. Source of breach detected in reliquary vault Theta 7. One rasped. Layered seals destabilizing. The Castellan turned sharply. The vault is reinforced by triple oath wards. What could? The shard pulsed again. Harder. Faster. Like a heart forced to beat out of rhythm. The neophyte felt dread coil in his stomach, cold and tight. Whatever was in that vault, the relic was calling to it, or warning it. Without waiting for orders, Castellan strode toward the exit, voice echoing like a war bell. "All squads converge on Theta 7. Weapons ready. No one walks alone." The veterans followed instantly, their steps thunderous, their eyes wary. The neophyte hesitated, feeling a subtle tug in his mind. Not a command, but a direction. A pull toward the vault, as if something inside was whispering his name. His pulse quickened, his throat tightened, but he followed, carried forward by duty, fear, and a spark of something else. The sense that whatever was happening deep within the cruiser's heart was tied to him in a way he could not yet grasp. As they descended through the ship's inner passageways, the lights flickered more violently. The distant alarm became a throbbing pulse, echoing through the hull like a heartbeat trapped inside metal. The inviolate oath seemed to groan under some unseen weight. The air grew colder, thick with a static that made the hair on the neophyte's arms stand on end. When they reached the final corridor before the vault, the atmosphere changed again. Not just cold, but bleak, as if all warmth had been drained from the air. The vault doors loomed ahead, massive ceramite slabs, each inscribed with wards, purity seals, and chains of sanctified steel. Yet now, thin cracks of dark light leaked through the seams, pulsing with the same rhythm as the shard. The Castellan raised a fist, and the column halted. Even the veterans shifted uneasily. Something was happening on the other side of those doors, something the wards were barely containing. The neophyte felt the pull intensify, sharp and insistent, tugging at the back of his skull like a hook. He clenched his jaw, fighting the urge to step forward. But a thought pressed into his mind, faint, fragile, and terrifyingly familiar. "You were brought here for this." His breath caught. Not a voice, not a command, but a realization. One that chilled him more than anything he had yet seen aboard the ship. Because deep within the vault, something answered his unspoken fear, with a single, resonant pulse that felt like a heartbeat synchronizing with his own. And then the first chain on the vault door snapped. The sound of the chain snapping was not the roar of some monstrous force or the shriek of metal under assault. It was quiet, almost delicate, a soft metallic recoil that echoed down the corridor like the final note of a long-forgotten hymn. The neophyte felt it more than heard it, a tremor running up his spine, a shift in the air, a release of pressure deep in his chest, as if the ship itself exhaled after holding its breath for far too long. The Castellan's hand tightened on his weapon, but his eyes, they softened, just for an instant, as though he sensed something beyond threat or danger, something inevitable. The remaining seals along the vault door fluttered, their parchment edges lifting in a breeze that didn't exist. Lines of script faded, as though erased by unseen hands. The neophyte watched the runes dim one by one, each wink of light extinguishing another layer of fear he hadn't fully realized he'd been holding. The second chain snapped, then the third. A hush settled over the corridor. No alarms, no flickering lights, no trembling metal. The inviolate oath grew strangely still, its engine hum leveling into a deep, steady resonance. The darkness leaking around the vault's edges brightened, not ominous, not violent, but warm, like dawn seen through smoked glass. Then the doors parted, not with force, not with violence. They simply eased open, as though pushed by a gentle hand. A soft glow spilled out, washing over the armored figures, illuminating the corridor in muted gold. It wasn't the harsh brightness of machinery or the cold luminescence of warp anomalies. It was something simpler, softer, a kind of light that made the neophyte's heart slow, his breath deepen, the tension in his shoulders dissolve. Inside the vault was no creature, no weapon waiting to be unleashed, no horror clawing its way into reality, only a pedestal, and upon it a second shard, twin to the first, yet different. Its glow was constant, steady, like a heartbeat that had waited millennia to be reunited with its counterpart. The Castellan stepped forward, reverent rather than wary. "So this is what she felt," he murmured, almost to himself. What she remembered. The first shard, still held in its containment field back in the strategium, pulsed faintly through the corridor's vox relays. A call, a recognition, a homecoming. The neophyte approached slowly, and no one stopped him, not because of orders, but because they all felt the same quiet truth, that whatever had pulled him here since the beginning, whatever intuition had sparked in him the moment the ship flickered around him, this moment belonged to him as much as it belonged to the cruiser. He stepped into the vault, the light brushing across his armor like warm fingertips. For the first time since he'd boarded the strike cruiser, he felt not the presence of a restless giant or a haunted cathedral of war, but something else beneath it all. Grief. The shard on the pedestal thrummed with memories. Not visions, not words, but impressions. Echoes of oaths sworn, losses endured, promises kept through centuries of silence. The inviolate oath had carried this weight alone, its memory fractured, incomplete. And now the missing piece rested before him, waiting for someone who could feel its pull. He reached out, stopping just short of touching the containment field surrounding the second shard. The glow brightened, responding not to power or rank, but simply to acknowledgement. Behind him, Castellan spoke softly. "For all our strength, for all our vows, we often forget that even steel remembers what the heart tries to forget." His voice held a rare note of reflection. This ship carried a burden it could not name. Now it seeks to be whole again. The neophyte felt a warmth bloom inside his chest. Not pride, not fear, but connection. The shards were not weapons. They were memories. Two halves of a single story the ship had guarded across the void, waiting for the moment they could be reunited. He stepped back as the Castellan approached the pedestal. The Tech Marines formed a circle, their voices blending with quiet machine prayers. A field extended, and slowly, with great care, they lifted the second shard from its cradle. The glow intensified, bathing the corridor in gold. As they carried it upward, through the winding halls, the entire ship seemed to stir. Light steadied, vibration softened. Even the air felt lighter, as though the inviolate oath was aligning with its own heartbeat for the first time in centuries. The neophyte followed the procession, feeling the cruiser's awareness brushing his thoughts, not as a presence watching him, but as one walking alongside him. When they reached the strategium, the first shard pulsed eagerly, its glow rising in perfect rhythm with the one being carried toward it. The containment fields merged, a soft hum rippling through the chamber. The shards drew closer, their edges shimmering, and for a moment, time seemed to hold still. The merging was not a flash of power or a shockwave tearing through the air. It was quiet, gentle, a sigh of relief from something that had waited longer than any living soul aboard the ship. The fragments fused into a single whole, a stone dark and luminous, ancient and newborn all at once. The inviolate oath shuddered softly, a resonance passing through its decks like a heartbeat synced at last after years of arrhythmia. And then silence, not the heavy silence of dread, but the warm silence that follows understanding, the kind that settles over a battlefield at dawn, or inside a cathedral emptied after prayer. A silence that meant completion. The neophyte realized, in that stillness, that the ship had never been warning them. It had never been haunted. It had been grieving, and reaching, and waiting for closure, waiting to become whole. The Castellan bowed his head. She remembers now, and so do we. The shard's glow faded into a steady, dormant pulse, content at last. The ship felt calm, at peace, and somewhere deep inside its structure, in a place no human could reach, 1,000 years of tension eased from its steel bones. The neophyte looked through the Oculus viewport, watching stars drift past like grains of light in a slow cosmic river. He felt small, yet connected to something immeasurably vast, not through power, but through memory, through the quiet truth that even machines can carry burdens, and even warriors can miss what stands silently beside them. In that moment he wondered, how many other ships roamed the void with stories carved into their hulls, waiting to be heard? How many truths did the galaxy hold, not in ancient artifacts or forbidden secrets, but in the quiet corners where no one bothered to look? He turned back to the glow of the merged shard, feeling its gentle warmth on his face. It didn't speak. It didn't need to. Some truths are not carried in words, but in the spaces between them. As the strike cruiser resumed its steady course through the stars, the neophyte felt his own heartbeat align with the rhythm of the ship, not as a master commanding metal, nor as a servant obeying tradition, but as a companion walking alongside a memory made whole. And he realized something that would stay with him for the rest of his crusading life, that sometimes the greatest battles are not the ones fought with blade and flame, but the ones quietly endured, waiting for the moment someone finally listens. He looked at the stars one last time, the merged shard glowing softly behind him, and wondered silently, what other stories lie in the spaces we never think to search? And who will we become when we truly learn to listen? If you feel connected to this journey and want more stories like this, make sure to like, comment, and share.